Okay, so you want to own a nightclub. Rent a building, install some speakers and a light show, hire a famous DJ, and watch people pay you just to stand in a crowded room until 3 in the morning. That's the picture. Here's the problem. You might only be open a handful of hours a week, yet the rent is due every single day of the month. The bottle of vodka that cost you $20 might sell for $300, and it still might not be enough. And one bad night, one fight, one lawsuit, one liquor violation can end the entire business in a single evening. Let's take this apart the way someone who actually runs one of these places has to see it. First, let's talk about why nightclubs are such a strange business from a real estate perspective. Most businesses try to open as many hours as possible to maximize how much use they get out of their expensive lease. A nightclub does the opposite. Most clubs are only truly profitable during a handful of peak hours on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights, sometimes barely 10 to 15 hours a week of real, serious revenue. Yet the landlord doesn't care how many hours you're open. The rent is calculated on the full month, whether you're packed wall-to-wall on Saturday or sitting completely empty on a rainy Tuesday. This single fact shapes almost everything else about how this business is built. A nightclub has to generate an entire month's worth of profit inside a tiny handful of nights, which means every single one of those nights has to work incredibly hard. There's very little room for a slow Saturday, because there isn't a Sunday afternoon rush or a weekday lunch crowd to make up the difference the way there is in a restaurant. Now let's talk about what it actually costs to open the doors. The space itself needs specific things a normal retail location doesn't. You need a building large enough for a dance floor, a stage or DJ booth, multiple bar stations, and enough bathrooms to handle hundreds of people cycling through over a few hours, which local fire and safety codes regulate strictly based on your maximum occupancy. Build-out costs, meaning the sound system, the lighting rig, the bar equipment, the flooring, and the design work that gives a club its identity, can run anywhere from a few $100,000 for a modest local club to several $1,000,000 for a large venue trying to compete at the top of the market in a major city. Sound and lighting alone deserve special mention, because in this business they aren't decoration, they're the actual product. A serious club sound system, capable of filling a large room with clean, powerful bass without distorting, can cost well into 6 figures. Lighting rigs, especially the moving, programmable kind synced to the music, add substantially more. This equipment also breaks down from constant heavy use, and replacing a blown speaker or a malfunctioning light fixture becomes a routine, recurring cost rather than a rare emergency. Then there's the liquor license, and this is where the business gets genuinely difficult before you've even opened. In many cities, the number of liquor licenses available is strictly limited by local government, meaning you can't simply apply and pay a fee like a normal business permit. In markets with a capped number of licenses, existing owners can sell their license to a new operator for tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars, completely separate from the value of the actual building or business. Without that license, you don't have a nightclub. You have an empty room with really good speakers. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Because most people assume a nightclub makes its money purely from the cover charge at the door. That's only a small slice of the picture, and honestly, in most clubs, the door charge barely covers the cost of security and staff working that entrance. The real money in this business comes almost entirely from one source: alcohol. Here's why the math works so heavily in the club's favor. A bottle of premium vodka that a club buys wholesale for maybe $20 to $30 can be sold by the individual drink for enough money to generate 3, 4, sometimes 5 times that cost across the whole bottle. And that's before we even talk about bottle service, which for many clubs is the single most important revenue driver in the entire business. Bottle service is exactly what it sounds like. A group reserves a table, and instead of ordering individual drinks all night, they buy full bottles of liquor delivered directly to their table, often with sparklers, a dedicated server, and a prime view of the dance floor. A single bottle that might retail for $40 in a liquor store can sell for $300 to $800 at a nightclub table, sometimes considerably more for premium champagne or top-shelf spirits. Groups often buy multiple bottles across a single night, and a handful of well-spending tables can generate more revenue in one evening than the entire cover charge line at the front door. This is exactly why nightclub floor plans are designed the way they are, with VIP tables positioned to be seen from the dance floor, close enough to feel like you're part of the energy of the room, but roped off just enough to feel exclusive. The seating itself isn't really about comfort. It's about creating a visible status symbol that makes other guests want to spend money to sit there too, which pushes table prices even higher on the club's most popular nights. Here's the twist, though. This entire model depends heavily on one very specific and very fragile ingredient: reputation. A nightclub's value is almost entirely tied to whether it's currently considered the place to be. Unlike a restaurant, which can survive for decades on consistently good food, a nightclub's popularity can shift dramatically based on nothing more than word of mouth, a viral social media moment, or simply the arrival of a newer, trendier club down the street. A club that was fully booked every weekend last year can find itself half empty within months if the crowd decides somewhere else is more exciting now. This is why nightclubs spend so much on talent booking, flying in well-known DJs and performers for a single night, sometimes paying tens of thousands of dollars or more for one headline act. The goal isn't just to fill the room that specific night. It's to create buzz, photos, and social media attention that keeps the club feeling relevant heading into the following weekend. A club that stops investing in that constant reinvention risks fading out of the conversation entirely, and once that happens, rebuilding a reputation is far harder than building one from scratch. Staffing this business is its own challenge. You need security staff trained to handle large, sometimes intoxicated crowds safely, bartenders who can serve drinks at an extremely fast pace during peak hours, and servers dedicated specifically to bottle service tables. Because the entire business happens in such a narrow window of hours, staff scheduling has almost no flexibility. You need a full team ready to go at full capacity the moment the doors open on a Friday night, even though that same team might have very little to do on a slow Tuesday, if the club even opens that night at all. And then there's the cost most people never think about until it happens: liability. A nightclub serving alcohol to large crowds, often late into the night, carries a genuinely elevated legal risk compared to almost any other type of venue. Overserving a guest who later causes harm, a fight breaking out on a packed dance floor, or a serious injury on a crowded staircase can all lead to significant lawsuits. Insurance for a nightclub is considerably more expensive than for a typical restaurant or bar, specifically because of this heightened risk, and a single serious incident can trigger a liquor license review that puts the entire business at risk of losing its ability to operate at all. Regulatory scrutiny doesn't stop there either. Fire code violations, noise complaints from neighbors, and occupancy limits are all strictly enforced, and violations can mean steep fines or, in serious cases, a temporary or permanent shutdown. A nightclub exceeding its legal capacity on a busy night isn't just a safety risk, it's a business risk, because that single violation can jeopardize the license the entire operation depends on. So does owning a nightclub actually work as a business? The honest answer depends heavily on staying power and how well the owner manages that constant pressure to stay relevant. A club chasing short-term hype with no real investment in staff training, safety, or reputation management is fighting an uphill battle, vulnerable to a single bad night undoing months of profit. A well-run club, with a strong relationship with regular bottle service clients, a consistent booking strategy that keeps bringing in fresh talent, and tight control over both safety and cash handling, can generate genuinely significant profit margins on the nights it gets right, because so much of nightclub revenue comes from alcohol sold at an enormous markup rather than a low-margin cover charge. It isn't really selling entry to a room anymore. It's selling status, energy, and a night people will talk about, with alcohol as the vehicle carrying almost all of the actual profit. A nightclub, in the end, is not really a hospitality business in the traditional sense. It's a reputation business wearing a bar as its engine. The door charge gets people inside. Everything after that, the bottle service, the DJ booking, and the fragile, ever-changing question of whether this club is still the place to be, is where the real economics of the business quietly live.